Hey guys, Josh from Countdown to Classic here. Well, today's the day we finally got a release date for World of Warcraft Classic, and I couldn't be happier. August 27, it's just a little bit further down the road. We can finally highlight a day on our calendars and look towards that and not have to guess anymore, which is just fantastic. We got a lot of other news today as well from Blizzard, including the fact that a closed beta is on the way soon. So we'll all cross our fingers and hope that we might be able to get involved in that somehow. But either way, we got told a whole lot of stuff today. And so I invited a bunch of listeners onto a call for the podcast to really break down what we heard and give their analysis, their thoughts, their feelings on everything that we took on board over the last few hours with this news. So please do have a listen over the next hour. There are some amazing points put forward here. And also find the podcast over at Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for Countdown to Classic and you'll get the show in full. All of these calls are compiled together into a great show for you, so please do check us out and have a listen. In the meantime, here we go. All right, it's time for another Countdown to Classic emergency call, and I'm actually going to have to keep my voice down slightly for this one. Now, if you weren't watching the stream this morning, here are the circumstances. Huge news has dropped. Holy shit, we got a release date. There is a beta. It's all confirmed. It's all happening, people. I wish I could sort of get a little bit more animated with this news, but here's the deal. It's 4 o'clock in the morning here in Australia. I've been up since 1. I've had barely any sleep. I'm very tired, but also I can't wake Patricia, who's behind me in the bedroom. So I've got a bunch of people on the line who hopefully can get a bit more animated than me. And we're going to have a Countdown to Classic emergency call about this huge news with some show regulars and some show newbies. Ale, say g'day, mate.
G'day, mate.
And Jamie, welcome back.
Thanks.
Jacoby, how's things, man?
Good morning, Josh. Good afternoon, North America, and good evening, Europe.
Oh, very, very sultry. And Gigantor, is this your first time on the show, mate?
No, I've been here a few times. I'm just forgettable.
No. I know I've talked to you on stream, but I wasn't sure if you'd actually been on the show yet. So you'll have to remind me, which call were you in on?
I think it was, maybe it was data that's not saved. It was like 97 or 96.
Okay. All right. I'll take your word for it. And I do
I was
apologize.
only for like a half hour or so.
Oh, good. I apologize for not recalling that. If we've had so many now, I'm losing track, which is a good position to be in. And finally, Viv, how are you, man?
Good. Just please don't ask me what episodes I've been on.
Yes, obviously Ale and Viv have been on quite a few episodes now, so it's good to have all of you back. But look, guys, let's talk about the news that everyone has been waiting for. Let's not bury the lead. August 27 is the date. WoW Classic servers go live then worldwide. Is everyone happy we finally ripped that Band-Aid off?
Finally, yes. Any date is better than continuously guessing. I think we were all kind of pulling our hair out the last few weeks waiting for news. So it may not be good for everybody, but it's good for some people. It's just better to finally.
Yeah, I'm surprised that they announced it so late. Also, it's going to be August 26th for people in North America. So
very, very good thing to add. Yes, it's interesting that they're doing, I mean, well, not interesting. I mean, I would have expected it. Obviously, the worldwide rollout calls for different times in different time zones. August 26th in North America, 8 o'clock in the morning here in Australia on August 27th. But yes, we'll all be logging on at the same time and all getting involved. But I agree that yes, absolutely, a date is better than no date. That sort of definitely goes without saying. And now we can end the speculation, end a bit of the bullshit, and just start to look forward to that date and circle it on the calendars. Now, it's something that I'll go into bat for our friend Mike, who's not in on this call, but is a bit unhappy with the date. I mean, obviously the date itself is going to work for some people. It's not going to work for others. Viv, you might be someone who can chip in on this one. Does it screw over the college kids a little bit?
Yeah. It's starting exactly a week after the next semester. So I'm basically screwed. Like, it's going to be like the first week of a semester is usually like syllabus week and kind of getting into the flow of things. But like that first weekend might be my only like feasible opportunity to get in any real time before college just explodes. So I don't know, whatever, it is what it is. You just got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, it's relatively inconsequential to me. I mean, I was like, if everyone's gonna have a date that works better for them. I was like, oh man, now I only get to take 2 weeks off work because I'm going to Hawaii, 3 weeks after launch. And, I don't think Patricia would particularly love it if I'm playing a shitload of WoW Classic on a beach in Waikiki, while we're doing our thing there. But, Gigantor, I'll ask you out of interest, any issues with the date at all, or is it perfect?
It's actually perfect for me. I get right off of work. I work the weekends. I come out Monday morning at 6 a.m. I'll be ready to play.
Fantastic. And Ale, any date was a good date?
Any date is a good day for me. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, guys. Well, that's August 27. Mark it on your calendars. It's fantastic that we finally got told. I know the subreddit was starting to go ape shit with the just give us a fucking date already. And as Jamie pointed out, I agree. It was oddly late, if you will. They kind of waited quite some time to give this to us, but it doesn't matter now. It's in the books. Let's move on, essentially. But there was some very, very meaty information that followed this date of August 27, and that's another date to look forward to for some people, which is May 15, when Blizzard has told us that a closed beta effectively will be taking place from May 15 onwards. Now, guys, you've read the news. We won't touch on the stress tests just yet. We'll get to that. We'll just focus in on this closed beta. And Ale, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on anything relating to that beta news? Is the fact that it's closed surprising? Do you think they'll eventually open it up? What do you think's going to happen there?
I'm not too surprised that it's closed. I was always in the camp that there's going to be as limited a beta as possible. I was actually even thinking maybe even no beta, which I guess now is foolish to consider, because as we've seen, it's kind of being used as a marketing. Having the invites, as far as we know, to content creators and streamers first, it's clearly going to be used a lot for them to market as well as test the game.
Oh, I'm with you. And it's one of those things where, I talked on the show recently. We've talked on the show. You completely sold me on the idea that there wouldn't be a beta. And I've said on the show recently, maybe I think they won't do a beta. Obviously here we are getting proven very wrong. But as you say, perhaps we put way, too little, sort of stock into the power of marketing, where we thought that the marketing would be a negative, where it's like you're showing off all your faults to the world and showing the bug reporting process out in the open, thinking that we'd get the same backlash that we got to the demo. Obviously, Blizzard is saying, no, this is part of the process. We don't care. We're advertising our game. People will understand there are warts, and we'll just deal with the process and hope that, have faith in our testers and hope that everything comes through in the end. Jamie, are you confident with this closed beta being able to pick up on a number of the issues, or what do you think about it in general? How did you take it on board?
Yeah, so I think that the biggest benefit to it is actually for leveling guides. I found out this morning as I was watching through all the streams that just little details that I've seen in a lot of the Cargos guides and other ones that I've read on the internet, that they're just not true in some areas. Quivers aren't going to work for warlocks and priests for the weapon speed, and that the sit crits are not going to work, which are in a lot of guides too. So this will give some people time to revise those resources and help people out that way. So I think that's a really good thing.
And I definitely want to touch on some of the things that have already been revealed just through the very little information or footage that we've got, like that /sit thing, because I had heard the same thing already. We're hearing /sit and getting your crits or whatever, doesn't work. Now I want to sort of find out from you, Jacoby, have you already gone through the motions of ticking that box and signing up to the WoW Classic beta to be considered for it on the website, which I just did a couple of hours ago as well? And if anyone's wondering, I have not received anything that I'm aware of. Now, I haven't been to work yet, and Blizzard generally would email me at work, so I don't know if there's something sitting in my inbox. But as of right now, as of the recording of this episode, I do not have an invite to this beta, so I'm as in the dark as, all of you are listening. Jacoby, are you crossing your fingers and sort of, saying a prayer and doing what you do to get into an eventual beta?
I'm kind of in the middle. I got the news this morning on the bus on the trip back from the country back into downtown Toronto. So I knew I had to get home and jump on Discord and see with everyone else. So I did do as you did earlier. I went on, I ticked that box. I opted into the beta. I opted out of literally everything else just so there was no confusion from Blizzard. But I'm also not an active subscriber of current WoW. And if that's the case, you need a subscription to get in the beta. Don't think at this moment I would go out and subscribe just to get into the beta early. Maybe if it was a guarantee, I would consider it. And if I have nothing else to do, but at the moment, I'm okay personally waiting because I don't want to resubscribe just for a test. I can wait till August.
Now, just throwing this one out to the floor, that is an interesting wrinkle to note. I mean, not that it's completely unexpected that, yes, you have to have an active subscription in order to gain access to the beta or these proposed stress tests or whatever it would seem. Does anyone take any particular issue with that course of action?
I'm just confused, actually, because is it that you have to be subscribed before you will get an invite in the first place, or that when you get an invite, you have to subscribe before you can play?
Yeah, I'm confused on that point as well. Like, I could give you my guess, which would be...
To my knowledge, you have to be actively subscribed, and then you will get a chance to get in.
Oh, really? I would have thought the opposite. There you go.
But if anyone has more concrete knowledge, please correct me.
So is that a bit of a guess?
Just sort of that's what the consensus I've gathered from everything I've been reading on the bus since I got home.
If they're actually going to add that as like a gate, it wouldn't make sense to give it to people who have inactive subscriptions and then just waste beta keys like that if they're not going to allow them in anyway. It seems weird.
See, I think it's a smart money grab because on one hand, You've got your current retail players or people who may have quit a month or two ago because they didn't like Battle for Azeroth. They'll turn their subscription back on for a chance to play this because it's something new and shiny. But then they're also dangling it in front of guys like me who haven't had an active subscription for a long time. And they're thinking, maybe we can get a little bit more out of him a couple months early to get him to play early. So it's tempting, but I don't know.
Doesn't seem like they're going down the money route on this one. Like, from the Tibbs interview, the one guy said, they really want concrete veteran players pretty much. I can't quote his exact words, but they don't want just a bunch of kids logging into the beta and giving their opinions.
It was also the insinuation, I believe I've read, where they might give some extra weight to the age of an account. Did you guys read that one?
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's wishful thinking personally, but
I mean, it made me resubscribe immediately, so.
So
I'm pretty sure it's going to make me do so as well.
It might be like a little bit of service to their long-term people, like, don't worry, we love you the most. And I'm like, thank you, Blizzard, but nah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've gotten every beta since Wrath. I don't know if that's just me having good luck or I'm a valued customer. I don't know.
Out of interest, Gigantor, what's been your most memorable beta?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Probably Cataclysm, because there were some really wild glitches where spells wouldn't have a cooldown or a global cooldown. And you could just run into an instance and kill bosses if you press the key fast enough.
That sounds fun.
Oh, it was wild. And they didn't take any of that stuff away that you got from exploiting that at the time, which was kind of sweet. You had a bump above everybody else if you figured it out fast enough.
Now, let me throw this out there, guys, because obviously a lot of people will be wondering, well, fuck me, right? If I don't get into the closed beta, am I screwed? Do you guys have any hopes whatsoever that at some point, even if it's just for a couple of days, they open the floodgates and say, you know what? Come on in, guys. Open beta now.
I think they might do that if there's enough interest. but yeah, I'm not hopeful for it.
I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest, if they did that, because I mean, they did it back in the day, and I don't know. Yeah, it's just like marketing, more marketing.
Well, also it says on the announcement page about the stress test schedule. Like, doesn't it make sense for them to do that?
Well, that was my next question, Jamie. So I'd love to hear your opinion on that. I'm getting the feeling, like, even though it doesn't specifically say it, that the stress tests might be a bit more open than the closed crowd. Do you get the same sort of take on that?
Yeah, I think that, and otherwise, why would they have laid out the dates like that?
I thought the stress test was for the closed crowd, honestly.
Well,
No,
it says subsequent
to log in.
It says subsequent stress tests will extend the opportunity to even more players than the beta.
Okay,
so it's basically saying, yeah,
they want to hammer their servers and see what they can do.
I think it also kind of ties into the trend how a lot of games these days are released as betas. So it's kind of like it's become an acceptable thing. So a lot of people will even see it as, oh, I just get to play World of Warcraft right now. It doesn't matter if it's beta. It looks good.
Yeah. Now, I should we put the cart before the horse a little bit. Now, in terms of these stress tests that we've now been referencing a few times, they've said that, yes, there are 3 days that they've nominated. One from the 22nd, over the course of the 22nd and 23rd of May, the 19th and 20th of June, and the 18th and 19th of July, they plan to open things up a little bit to more players to stress test the servers and obviously just see how they handle with pure numbers, just absolutely flooding them at one given time. So it will be interesting to see how that goes. But in terms of how the servers will be, acting during World of Warcraft Classic, we got some extra news, and there's been a few extra videos that have come out with some extra information. Ale, I want to start with you on this one because I got introduced to a new term that I've never heard before, and it's within reason that I've not heard it before because they effectively said that they've created this new tech for Classic, and I'm now aware of something called layering. So actually, here's what we'll do. Ale, before we get to your breakdown of what you think of layering, why don't you just explain it as best you can from what you've heard, what it is?
Layering is sharding on a continent scale up to 3,000 people per shard, I think is as simply as it can be.
Yes. So that was my interpretation as well. And you guys, if you were watching the stream, you saw me very slowly work this out as I said, I was watching it at like 2:00 in the morning. I'm like, so it does what? So it's the same thing for all intents and purposes as far as I'm concerned, except it's on a bit more of a mass scale.
Well, I think it's a lot different though, because it, like, as you're playing, people don't phase in and out, like, as you change zones, because it's across the whole continent. So I think that makes a big difference.
Oh yeah, I'm sure the actual way in which it's, implemented is slightly different, but would you agree, Jamie, that it's effectively the philosophy is somewhat similar, or do you think it's quite different?
I think it's a compromise. So I was listening to the Stay Safe stream where they were kind of explaining their philosophy behind it, and they were saying that the first time that they actually implemented this into the game was in Warlords of Draenor, and I think they called it layering back then, and then it turned over time into sharding, which is what they have in BFA now. And this approach that they're taking for Classic is some kind of like medium in between the two. So it's not really like anything we've seen before. It's like kind of a compromise specifically for this game and the problems that they're anticipating for it.
All right. Jacoby, Gigantor, Viv, anything you want to add before we get into what you think about it all? I want to make sure that we have defined this correctly for the listeners as to what it is. Then we'll get to what we reckon of it. Do you think we've missed anything out?
I don't know. The best metaphor I've heard to describe it so far is to think of it like pitchers of water. The players fill up the pitcher until it gets to 3,000. And then it spills over into the next pitcher and then they fill up. So yes, technically there could be a point where there's one very empty pitcher, but at the rate of players, that's going to fill up very quickly. So don't worry about that. And then the other thing to keep in mind is that even though you're on the same server, Kalimdor and the Eastern Kingdoms, you should think of them as two different pitchers. So even though you're playing on the same server, when you cross over, you'll go to a different pitcher on the other side. but it's the same server.
I have one thing I would like to add, which is more of a question for how it's defined than anything, just to get further confirmation. So is there queuing happening like after the fact? Like once the layering is gone, is there queuing happening, or is it like open after that?
I haven't seen anything that confirms that, but based on what I was saying before, I think the theory is that you just keep filling up pitchers as more people want to play. So it's to avoid the queuing problem, because I think someone else said it's 2019. We don't want to queue anymore.
Yeah,
I thought
I saw one of the streams where a dev was talking about queuing. So I don't know if that was talking about after this is gone or.
I wouldn't expect nothing, but yeah, maybe a little less than we used to have back in.
Jamie's right.
What I'm understanding is the layering is removing the need for queuing for now and making it to where like there's like 3,000 people per layer of a continent or whatever. And that's like the point of layering, I guess, is to remove the queue situation, but not make it seem like sharding where like there's like phasing in and out of people on even like cross the zone, you know, to where you're like not seeing the same people and stuff. So I think it's like supposed to be that.
One thing I want to bring up though is that you can move across layers. They haven't, and that's my main issue with it that I think needs to be mentioned, because that brings about a lot of the issues that people had with sharding, and it really needs to be more defined by Blizzard how easy it is or what causes you to move across a layer. Right now they said that they're trying to keep all guilds, or like they'll keep all guilds within a layer. But if you're invited by someone on your friends list who's on the same server who isn't in your layer, you'll be put in their layer. And due to this, there's a potential for abuse, I believe, as well as kind of similar things to what sharding,
Now, just before, I want you to talk about what your theories are on the potential for abuse there. But just before you go into that, I just want to mention a couple of things that we haven't said yet that are rather important. Now, as I'm reminded, thank you very much by Sword and Board in Twitch chat. Yes, I did realize this and I should have said it earlier. We have been told that apparently layering is going away after phase 1. So if you're worried about this happening during, or when, or you're, later on in phase 2, all your craziness with world PvP and whatnot, fear not. We are told that this is just a phase 1 thing. It's just the first few months or whatever of Classic, and then hopefully it goes away. Now, we'll get into why that may be the case later on, but also, Gisco329 points out that, they seem to think that one of the devs did mention the fact that this is supposed to reduce queue time. So I believe that I thought I might have heard something as well. So that might have well been the mention that I remember as well. So that might be the case. So maybe there still will be queue times and this just alleviates that somewhat. Now, Ale, back to you. Tell me why you think layering may be abused in some way, or how it could be abused.
It can be abused by, having friends in different layers and basically being able to access resources, at a grander scale in which you could normally. So for example, say you're leveling as a mage, you're doing AoE farming, you can clear out, a pack, get an invite from a friend to a different layer, all the mobs potentially are spawned, you clear out that pack, you go to a new layer, same thing. You can keep hopping between these layers to basically speed level or, mass farm, Black Lotus.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. The Black Lotus is the one that's jumping to my mind.
As well, say you're being ganked by somebody, you can get an invite from a friend, you leave that layer. That could be a benefit, but for somebody who, doesn't know that layering exists, having people just like vanish, it's kind of like sharding, right? Or maybe, there's like a strike team all kind of zones into your layer. 40 people just like spawn on top of you because they're invited in, and, it's like, what the heck?
Is there anyone here who isn't particularly as concerned about those things as Ale might be?
I think they already have it worked out for the most part. I can't imagine them having it, or like he just said, 40 people loading in on you. It might not be effective in combat, for instance, so you might have to not worry about it in PvP.
It does seem a little worst case scenario, and I don't think we're going to see big numbers of people doing that. But like I've always said, like my only guarantee with layering or sharding is that as long as it's limited, I'd have no problem with it, and as long as it stops at phase 1, I'll keep playing. But that's my only.
I'll absolutely throw in that, and we went through this when we talked about loot trading as well. We always sort of will start with worst case scenario, because I guess that's effectively what you have to take into account. Now, I'm not putting forward, and I'm sure Al's not putting forward the argument, this will be adopted by the community and happen en masse. Classic is broken, DOA. Well, I don't think that's the narrative that I'm not trying to put forward with the show. And Ale, whether or not you agree with that or not, let me know. But I think it's always just something where you dangle out the worst case scenario and go, well, sure, only like a couple of people might try and do this, but it should be known that perhaps it could be a possibility. I don't know. Let's sort of try and get down to the bottom of it. But
I definitely think if the potential for abuse is there will be people doing that. And some of the guests that you've had on the show previously, they're already planning as of today on how they're going to split their guild up into multiple guilds to be able to hop between layers. Already, we're not going to have one guild. We're going to have multiple guilds. We're going to try to get them in different layers so they can basically control like a server's entire resource to one guild, right? It's scary.
Well, that makes me think. I wonder how they're going to do the resources. I don't know if they'll also be layered in a way, or they'll have a way to control that so it's not abused.
An interesting point raised by Neil, our dear friend Neil, in Twitch chat just now, and here's one for you guys to ponder as well. Jamie, I might start with you. He says, for layering, I hope that these layers are going to be forced to be balanced into Alliance Horde correct ratios, because it could be abused or straight up not fun for people stuck on an 80-20 Alliance to Horde ratio layer. Do you think that anything like that might even factor in, or it's just going to be a bit random, Jamie?
I mean, it's hard to say, because then at some point, if they do factor in like certain layers having a balanced faction population and others won't, then Horde or Alliance would basically get their own layer to themselves. That doesn't seem like it makes sense. I would think that they'd reflect the actual populations on each side for each layer.
I've been thinking, I had a random thought just now.
Go, mate.
I agree with Ale. There's definitely, I mean, if you give people the opportunity to exploit resources that are extremely valuable in the game, they're going to, because that's the way that's the way it was in vanilla. That's the way it was on private servers. That's the way it'll be in classic. Like Devil Sword Mafia, perfect example. Black Lotus Mafia, like all that stuff. But my thought is, yes, because of the value of resources in vanilla, there's definitely going to be exploits on the nodes. But my other thought is it will be harder, at least, to have a Devil Sword Mafia, because there'll be more than one group of Devil Swords across different layers. So I don't know if I'd call that a positive that even comes close to outweighing the negative potential of the abuse. But
right.
Yeah.
So you're right in that if there is an additional layer, with that layer comes, that huge increase in population, like another 3,000 or so potentially. So, they would be competing with essentially another server if they were able to, hop into that layer.
Now, Gigantor, let me ask you this one. Just in terms of what the thinking was behind layering, because it is on such a mass scale. Basically, it was described to us by the developers that you could fit up to, as Jacoby mentioned as well, up to 3,000 people on a layer. And they're planning on doing multiple layers on servers, on each server. So now my interpretation of this is, and I'm happy to be told why I'm wrong or if I'm right or what have you, is effectively they're building what would be a private server population size on the one server, but dividing us up into these different, quote unquote layers. And having us, chop and change between the layers or what have you, and then over time removing the layers with the players that are left and saying go nuts. Now, we've talked about this off call and said, well, effectively they're planning on, and this isn't news to some people, the population to dwindle. And as the population goes down after interest in Classic sort of flames out a little bit, then the servers will perhaps be back to what we would think a regular server size should be. Do you agree with that? Do you think that's the reasoning behind Blizzard doing this?
For me, it's questionable. I honestly can't tell what they're going to do. It could be on one hand where, imagine if the server population doesn't flop after this outbreak.
Exactly.
And it's still 15, 20,000. And Blizzard's kind of just going, oh, fuck, what did we do? And then, on the other hand, it could work out perfectly. I don't honestly know. I'm hoping for more information from them.
All right, Jamie, I'll turn to you. I think you might have been mentioning in Twitch chat earlier, or at least a couple of people were, that, well, yeah, this is the plan. We all know this is going to happen. OSRS went through it. Yeah, it's great to come out of the gate with everyone excited about your game, but after that, initial burst, you're going to have a pretty significant drop off. And this is, Blizzard's smart planning around that drop off. Is that what you're thinking, or do you disagree with that?
Oh, yeah. I think that it's smart planning on Blizzard's part, and I think that it'll work in the favor of the whole player base, if you're looking in the long term. And I mostly speak from, I had an interview on the show with RP PvP servers a while ago, and I talked about what it's like to be on a dead realm. And that's exactly what happened with the ones that I was, that my main characters are on in retail. They just died because people don't want to play on them. And I don't want that to happen in Classic, right? So it's just better to kind of plan for the worst and then, have people just move off later. Yeah.
I completely agree that it will alleviate dead realms. My only concern is, phase 1, if it's a decently long amount of time, like I expect it to be, considering it's a leveling period and molten core and all that stuff, then that's going to be a significant amount of time for people to exploit Black Lotus and become millionaires before, basically it goes away.
I would think that Blizzard is smart enough to put limitations on those kind of resources, at least, right? They've been pretty good on news items so far.
I have to think there would be Blizzard could step in if it got out of hand too.
Yeah.
Yeah, private servers have had to implement a lot of things based on this, because originally in Classic, Black Lotus was a 1 hour cooldown to spawn, and it would spawn in one of I think 9 to 12 locations depending on the zone, and you could have a shaman essentially cover the whole zone with far sight to see exactly where it spawns. And because it would spawn exactly on the hour, you would have multiple people waiting in those areas. So they would have to kind of implement changes, I think, for something like this to actually be effective, right? But it depends where they stick to. If they're sticking purely on no changes, it might open up the possibility for people to game the system.
Another of my concerns is, if they do not implement queues, a concurrent cap on the server of 3,000 or so, maybe a little higher, as high as 5,000, I guess, would be okay-ish. Then it's going to turn into Nostalrius, where there's 12,000 people all competing for the same resources on a server. Because, like Jamie was saying, it's alleviating the concern of dead realms, but at the same time, there's potential that it's going to have huge total realm populations. So if there's not a concurrent cap with queues after the fact, then that's going to be a real problem, in my opinion.
So are you against the idea of realm transfers? So I would think that would be their next step, right? To offer free realm transfers for super high pop realms.
I'm not really against that idea. No, that existed in vanilla, didn't it? It's just all the other services.
Mm-hmm. They would have to be restricted so you can transfer to that server, but only off that server, because people would end up all congregating on one server. The server that I played on in Classic actually got ruined by the open transfers because it was such a popular server for Horde PvE that everybody would go there because that's where all the top guilds were, and it actually like killed an entire faction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was awful.
Guys, while we're talking about realm transfers and things with the realms, in general, the next thing that we got confirmed from the developers themselves was the fact that we are getting cross-realm battles. So it's early in the morning, cross-realm battlegrounds in World of Warcraft Classic. Now, that was obviously a feature later on in the game. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, that was introduced in 1.12, wasn't it?
I'm not sure which patch it was.
I'm pretty sure it was 1.12, but I'm happy to be told I'm wrong if it was 1.1.
Yeah, that was the Drums of War patch.
Yeah,
that was the whole feature about it.
Okay, fantastic. I'm not going crazy, and I'm not sort of spouting complete shit because I'm half asleep. That's good to know. But what I now gather from this is, I've been saying this, and I'm not the only one saying this recently, is that it really does seem like they only had available this 1.12 data, and that the whole time Classic has been under development, it's only ever going to be 1.12, 1.12 Alterac Valley, 1.12 Talents, and now we're being told, yes, the cross-realm BGs of 1.12. Now, whether or not, some people might say, Josh, of course they could remove it if they wanted to. They're Blizzard. They can do anything. Like, I don't know how they're building this game. I don't know what data they need to draw on or whatever. But either way, they've gone in that this direction. Now, here's the thing. I want to know what your guys' take on this. Was anyone particularly, let's start, with you, Viv, perhaps, and to start with, were you shocked by this, and what are your thoughts on it? Once we go through everyone, I'll give you my thoughts.
I wasn't shocked by it, but I don't like it, obviously. I've said all along, as long as something was in vanilla at any point, then I'm going to be okay with it and accept it. But at the same time, this is one of the biggest things that I hoped wasn't put in the game, because in my opinion, the pre-Cross-Realm Battlegrounds PvP community was on a whole other level from what it's ever been anytime since. And the rivalries and friendships that you could gain because of that were memorable to me even this day. I still remember people's names from back then, all kinds of people from the other faction, people from my same faction who PvP'd all the time. And any person that I meet from back then, like reunite with, we end up talking about like all these people we fought against, and we remember them fondly and like all the crazy battles that took place with them. So this kind of thing really bothers me in a way. I don't know. It's just, it's kind of like a you had to be there situation to explain it, because the people who weren't there for that probably don't see the appeal of it. But that's just my opinion on it. Like, I think it should not be that way, but I'll accept it.
All right. Just to balance out, is anyone on the line who isn't particularly fussed with cross-realm battlegrounds?
I'm super excited for them.
Yeah, same.
I'm ecstatic.
You guys are happy that we're getting it. Is that the case?
Yeah, I wanted it.
Okay, go into it. Jamie, we'll start with you, then we'll go down the line.
So I totally understand what Viv is saying about like why it's appealing to have like it only on one server, but it has a lot of problems too. So one of the ones that has been addressed on the show was by OG, I think. He talked about like pre-mades cheesing queues and like using it to abuse the honor system. So I can see that happening if we don't have cross realm. I keep saying dead realms, but that's another thing too. So if you're on a realm that doesn't have a good faction balance or whatever, you're looking at like 45-minute plus queues, and that's not fun. So there's like some other things too.
I think layering is going to alleviate population imbalance, though, if they do it right. Because I would think, I don't know, it depends. Like, are they going to make layering like to where you're not like dedicated to a realm yet, or not? That's the main question.
So layering, I don't think affects the cross server battlegrounds at all. Like, you're still assigned to your realm.
I would have thought so.
Well, also, I
yeah.
don't think that they're not going to cross anyway, because they're saying that layering's not going to go past phase 1 and battlegrounds are not going to be introduced until phase 3. So,
Jacoby, let's hear from you why you're not particularly fussed about cross-realm BGs.
I wasn't vocal about it, but my opinion from the get-go is that we need cross-realm battlegrounds from the start. I agree with like Jamie, and I was going to say to Viv, like I totally get where he's coming from. Like I wasn't around for much of the old PvP days, but that is some of my most fond memories. And I know it was good to have that, cross realm sort of on the same server rivalry. But what my concern is for the long-term health of the game is that if you have it that way, it won't last past a year. It's going to eventually die off, or, you'll get sick of fighting the same people. So it's like getting used to having that constant queue of, it's a little less faceless, but you'll get used to, it's that queue and go kind of mentality. You shouldn't have to wait for a battleground. You should be able to say, I want a PvP, go talk to the guy, let's go, find a group to fight. And it actually works really well for the people who want to play PvE servers and don't want to get ganked in the world, but they really do like their dose of PvP every now and then. It's really good for them just to queue and go, rather than their server may not have a healthy PvP mentality. So if they were to go the normal route, they could take them an hour to find a battleground, and that's a long time. They could be doing something else, right? So I think for the health of the game, it's good to have it from the get-go and get people used to it.
Yep. Gigantor, do you echo those? Do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, yeah. I'm personally very happy, and I have a small background story on this. I started in early BC. I didn't get to experience the time where there wasn't cross-realm battlegrounds, but I was on a low-pop server when I started. And so you don't just get connected to every realm in the system with cross-realm battlegrounds. You get connected to 3, 4, maybe 5 and 6, depending on how dead your realm is. So they'll connect all the dead realms together and make one cross-realm system. So you'll still see all those PvPers all the time. If, for instance, you're on a dead realm. I experienced that all the time. I always saw the same names in the battlegrounds. All the players I hated with a passion or I loved grouping with. And when the BattleNet finally came in, I think it was, what was it, Wrath? I don't remember. But I send messages to these guys in the battlegrounds like, hey, you want to do BattleNet? And they're like, hell yeah, let's play together. And to me, that was very cool.
All right. Now, Al, I'll turn to you because we've just heard 3 listeners in a row talk about the fact that they are not particularly fussed by the fact that cross-realm battlegrounds are coming into Classic and that they are for it. You know, there's a lot of people who disagree with that as well, who might be listening and going, oh, fuck, come on, Josh. Like, let's hear from someone who is, anti this decision. I've got a funny feeling, Ale, that you might be anti this decision. You were kind of secretly hoping for non-cross-realm battlegrounds. Am I right in guessing that?
You're right, but it's really selfish because I understand Jamie's point of view. I was fortunate to play on a server that really had the best case scenario for these battlegrounds, where not every server did. There were servers with imbalanced populations and, less people overall, and so it made it that people couldn't even really PvP. But for me, my experience in having battlegrounds locked to just one server was amazing and something that I wanted to recreate based on kind of similar things that Vivid said, is that you end up forming these such close relationships with people that you play with and play against day to day that it was something that hasn't been recreated since. And so I'm really sad that, it won't be, essentially.
All right.
I also want to echo the sentiment that I agree with the concerns and the issues that the other 3 have raised. But yeah, I guess it's just like there's benefits to both sides of it, but in the end, there's the health of the community versus the health of the game. So I guess in this case, Blizzard has weighed the two.
Could you explain the difference between the two? Because to me, they're the same thing.
Well, okay, so the health of the community would be basically aided in the PvP community, at least, by not having cross-realm battlegrounds, because it strengthens the PvP community like a lot. At least in my experiences in the past. I'll just say that I PvP'd a lot in vanilla. Okay, so I'll just leave it at that. But basically, that was my time of PvPing. So that's why I view it that way. It might not necessarily be the right view, but
can I just
the health of
Go, Jamie, go for it. What's up?
Sorry. So I think that it benefits a certain demographic of people to have it only be on one server, but it also makes it so for people who are trying to get into Battlegrounds and are new and don't have any gear, it makes it a lot harder when you're fighting against people who are like, in full PvP gear and all this stuff. And like, that's very discouraging. And that for the long term, if we're talking about game versus community or whatever, they are the same thing. And it's going to kill both of them if you are like getting steamrolled every time you try to do a Battleground.
I also think we have to consider that we live in the Twitch age now, and I do agree, Viv, it was better back in the day, and I would like to keep it that way. But for these days, like, if Tipsow's playing on a server and a lot of people are playing with him, he's going to end up fighting the same people over and over again every week on his stream, and that's not even good for his viewers. Like, to have the queue and go and you could get matched with anybody, and then to form those BattleNet relationships, that's better for the viewability of Classic as well. And I think that Blizzard understands that.
I'll jump in at this point, guys, and Viv, let me know if you wanted to say something to finish off your point. We stopped you halfway, I think, just before, but that's all right. I'll give you a chance to finish it off in a second, but I just want to say this in terms of my 2 cents. And I know, obviously we say this with the caveat that, I tell you at the start of every show, it's not my opinion that matters, but yours. But, fuck it. For shits and gigs, I'll give you mine for once. Appreciate that what Viv said earlier was probably one of the best assessments of this whole situation in terms of, there are good points on both sides. And really, I feel like this is correct in saying that both sides are right for different reasons. I've been seeing this come up in conversations a lot about cross-realm battlegrounds, and you sort of start firstly with this notion that, it was only in 5 months of vanilla, it doesn't count. You hear that from some people, and I just want to shoot down that argument straight away because if anyone in this call disagrees with me, please do let me know. Please don't be shy in saying this, but I just think if you start to set arbitrary dates in terms of, you had to have been in vanilla for X amount of time to be considered a feature of vanilla. Now we're getting to ridiculous land. So, if something was in 33% of vanilla or whatever it was, then I'm fucking fine. It was part of vanilla. All right. So I'll just move on. That's my point of view. Okay. Now moving on from that, I'm fine with, cross-realm BGs being in the game because, and again, Viv, you might suggest otherwise if you want to sort of counter me after this one. But we talk about, yes, it is such a shame to have the loss of really intense rivalries with the same people that you're seeing in every battleground and whatnot. But I'm of the opinion that you still come across the same people every now and again in your battle group. It's just not on as frequent of a basis. So rivalries can still be established within a battle group. It's just not that you're going to be seeing them every round. Am I wrong on that one?
I can't really speak to that because I didn't ever really hardcore PvP after cross-realm battlegrounds were added. I just kind of casually did it. But I guess it's possible depending on how many people are on all the different servers in your battle group, or if it's going to be like no battle groups like it is nowadays. And it's just like everyone ever basically. So I guess it depends on how they implement it.
All right.
Yeah. I also want to know if, are you locked to people just from your realm for cross-realm, or is it like you go in and people on your team are from any realm and people on the other team are from any realm as well? Or is it like you can only queue in with people on your whole team is mixed?
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting point. I do like that though.
Yeah.
Are they gonna, let's say you have like 15,000 people on a server and you got 5 mixes of 3,000 people. Do they just throw those people around, or do they still do cross realms of other realms as well if necessary?
Another thing I would add is there could be the potential that they will highly prioritize same realm battlegrounds until there's a spillover or a need based on a queue time for them to open it up a little bit more. I would like to see that maybe at least maybe 5 minutes in a queue for your own server. And then if nothing pops, then you're opened up to cross realm queue maybe or something like that.
Yeah. I think that'd be good. I think I didn't really flesh out my point about why it's so bad when you're fighting people that are more geared than you are. It's not only the fact that they're more geared when you're going in, it's that they're winning all the battlegrounds. So you can't ever gain enough honor to actually buy honor gear. So
that's not true. That's absolutely not true in vanilla because of the way the ranking system works. You're only competing with your own side. So it doesn't matter if you get steamrolled in every match because everyone's getting steamrolled in every match. It's just that how much honor you're getting versus everyone else. So if you're in a battleground losing all the time, as long as you're spamming battlegrounds more than everyone else or getting more kills in the battlegrounds, you're going to get more gear than the other people in your faction.
Yeah, but the actual honor that you're buying?
Faction, but not the Horde. Say I'm an Alliance player and the Horde is kicking our ass. I mean, your faction has no chance of ranking up past them. You need to dilute that pool with other people who are getting shit on.
You don't compete in rank. You don't compete in ranks with the opposite faction, though. You only compete in ranks versus your own faction. So the honor calculations.
Yeah, against the players on your side. But if your entire faction is getting steamrolled and you're not ranking up as fast as the Hordes are.
Yeah, you are, because it's all percentage based. It's all percentage based, so it doesn't matter
how many battlegrounds you're
losing,
losing,
how much honor you're getting. Yeah, it doesn't matter how much total honor you're getting. It only matters how much you're getting versus the other.
But I'm talking about buying honor pieces, with actual. I guess you're talking about just a gate. That's kind of a separate discussion. Never mind.
Yeah, guys,
this is just kind of getting into the nitty gritty.
I'll move this one on just so we don't get too bogged down. If anyone, by all means, if anyone was really had their interest piqued by what that little rabbit hole we were going down there, by all means, we can bring everyone back for it. No. I'm more than happy to go down that tangent another call. If anyone wants to say hey, Josh, get those guys on and let's do another call another day and expand on that point, then more than happy to. But, guys,
can I just add one last part to that?
Go, mate.
I just want to say you don't buy honor or gear with honor, PvP gear with honor in vanilla. You buy it with gold, and you only can buy it based off what your rank is. Yeah,
I guess I should make a disclaimer that I started in Wrath, so.
Yeah, sorry. If people listening aren't in the Discord, Jamie was a Wrath baby, so fair enough there.
So it only matters what rank you have. So the honor you get versus your own faction is the only thing that matters based off what gear you're eventually going to be able to buy. So that's it.
All right.
Cool.
Now, guys, there's a couple more points I want to hit on before we finish up this call. And real quick, it was also intimated in, from the developers. And I'm being told in Twitch chat that apparently I can't find the link anywhere when I Google this, but someone's saying that J. Allen Brack's just given an interview to Forbes again. Or maybe, I don't know if they're referencing the old one, but they said today, that he's given an interview referencing the fact that Burning Crusade and Wrath, servers, classic servers, are distinct possibilities in the future for Blizzard. Obviously, perhaps if classic is successful. I think there was another intimation, from Omar Gonzalez and John Haidt that might be a possibility as well from them. So do you think from everything we've heard, if that's the case, everything we've heard today, that we can just lock in that that's probably going to happen if Classic is successful, and we can just forget all this chat about, extra content that's freshly designed for Classic? Guys, I'll go down the line one by one. Al, what do you reckon?
If they're going to add more content?
No. I'm saying, given if we had multiple developers today, and perhaps even J. Allen Brack himself today saying, yeah, when we're far from opposed to Burning Crusade and Wrath servers coming out later down the line, do you think if that were the case, we can just bury any chat now about new content?
I don't think so. I think everything kind of hinges on how successful Classic is. If there's an appetite for it, then I think they would definitely consider it. But if this, falls flat on its face, then absolutely.
Jamie?
I want to say like Team Wrath Classic. Like I'd rather have that game just because I'm biased. But yeah, just it depends on if Classic is successful or not.
Jamie's licking her lips to do a call with Viv in 4 years' time when Wrath's coming out, going, "Listen up, fucker. This is how it was in Wrath." Now, Jacoby, what about you?
I'm kind of in the middle. Like I could definitely enjoy content because vanilla, TBC, and then Wrath were the glory days as well, and that's when I spent my most time. I stopped playing in Wrath, but I think agree as well. I think we shouldn't expect it until we see how Classic's doing after a year. If it's a good solid hit, then yeah, we can absolutely expect more content. If it's a niche narrow community, they'll probably keep the servers going for a few years and then retire them. I wouldn't expect extra content.
Okay, what about you, Gigantor? Did you hear anything today that rules out extra content for you?
I could certainly expect it if this does well. I couldn't see them not doing it. Like, that data is even more present than Classic. I wonder how many files of that they have on load of like TBC and Wrath. They could just roll this out whenever they wanted, probably. Imagine you get to level 60, something pops up. You've completed level 60 or so on. Would you like to progress to the next expansion? Like, and you dismiss it and you keep playing vanilla as long as you want. And later on down the line, say you get rank 14, you're just like, I want to go. You go into the interface. There's an option there. Progress to the next expansion. You press it like 3 times, like when you delete a character, just to make sure you're actually doing it. And bam, you're in TBC. You won't be able to see any of the people in vanilla. You'll be only with those people who chose that option just like you. I could see that.
All right. And finally, Viv, I'll give it to you to wrap up on this very quick point, but I've actually just been sent the link, and thank you so much for that one. I really do appreciate that, to a listener, Gisco329. And I'll read this verbatim for you, Viv, so you can give us your impressions, but it is rather vague. So the question is, so there's the opportunity for, if folks wanted it, the vanilla server, the Burning Crusade server, the Wrath server, and Brack answers, yes, I don't want to trivialize the amount of work that's required to do that or the amount of time. It's not something we can just dial up and dial down at any moment, but assuming a wildly successful Classic, we'll see what the future brings. So, how do you feel about that?
Well, as long as you can stay on vanilla if you want, and preferably if you can copy your character to Burning Crusade, but maintain your character on vanilla still, then I'm okay with it. Cause it's just going to, keep people playing, I guess. But I personally will probably still continue playing vanilla, even if Burning Crusade is out, and maybe like dabble in Burning Crusade cause I just don't like it as much. But, I don't mind the existence of it. I don't mind them wanting to explore the option if Classic is wildly successful. But if I had to choose future content personally, I would go with the creating new stuff for vanilla, but have it copy a character over so you have the preserved vanilla version. Because I think it'd just be better, more fun for me. But
personally, for me, I'll just say that I feel like if they're even referencing that now, and if we're getting it for someone as high up as JR and Brack, I mean, and this is open to interpretation and anyone can change their minds. My personal take would be that's the death knell for future, new content. I think that if they're already referencing amongst the dev team and amongst the executives, if Classic kicks ass, we're not opposed to doing Burning Crusade and Wrath. I think that's it for anything outside of that progression line. But anyway, that's
you're probably true.
Yeah.
You're probably right.
Now, guys, let's go into real quick before we finish up this call, this final, I'll open it up after this one, but I just want to cover off the Create Your Character news that we got. Now, they're opening up 2 weeks before the launch of Classic, the ability to create your character. And if you have an active subscription, you'll be able to go in and create up to 3 characters and effectively reserve your name or whatnot. Now, Does anyone have any really strong feelings about this? I think this is a good thing. Is anyone thinking it's shit?
No, I think it's fine. A lot of games do that let you like, especially if you like pre-ordered or something, you get to reserve your name or whatever. Yeah, I think it's pretty normal.
I think it's good.
It's good for me personally, but I was kind of laughing earlier, like listening to Asfan saying, like, what if all of a sudden realizing, what if 40 people just log into 40 servers and take the name Asfan? Like, what's he going to do? He's screwed either way.
Well, wasn't that going to happen? I mean, that's going to happen either way, whether it happens 2 weeks beforehand or on launch day.
Yeah, that's true. People will be trying to
hoping
troll.
Blizzard gives him some sort of extra special super early pass to lock his name down, but it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, I guarantee people will try to troll all the content creators. There'll be like Asmongold's on every server and everything.
Lock it in. We had XX Legolas XX in Classic. It'll be XX Asmongold XX in, you know what I mean, in Vanilla and now in Classic. Yeah.
That actually brings up a point really quick. One thing I'm really excited for is because I liked back in the day all the Legolas stuff because Lord of the Rings had just come out, right? But think about how much awesome fantasy material we've had in the last 15 years. We're going to see Geralt of Rivia running around. We're going to see Arya Starks. We're going to see freaking Iron Mans. Like, you know what I mean? Like, people are going to be locking this stuff in so early now.
Every gnome female named Arya Stark. Just lock it in now. All right. Now, guys, let me just go through just the final points because there was obviously some beta footage that's already been released. And Ale, I'd love to start with you on this one. Did you see anything? Did you hear of anything that was news to you of how it's going to be in Classic that we didn't know before? We talked about the /sit thing very, very briefly earlier. What else have you already learned?
The couple big things is one, they're not going to be putting the unarmored mount.
The unarmored mounts, did you say?
Yes. So originally in Classic, they had kind of the original mounts. So for humans, it was just like a horse without any armor. And that was because they hadn't, I guess, finished designing them or doing the proper artwork for them. And then later it was replaced with armored mounts. And it wasn't very long after release, like maybe a few months or so, they did this, and it's made it so those mounts are like some of the rarest mounts, if not the rarest mounts in the game. And there was an article from one of the media people who went to the summit, specifically asked about that, and they said that they're not going to have those in.
All right. And anything else that you picked up on?
The original collector's edition pets being in is one that's kind of
yes,
I'm lucky that I have it, so.
Oh, very good. Now, we didn't talk about this. Yes, they are doing a collector's edition of Classic, and it's got a few, cool little knickknacks with it. And Al, explain the pet thing.
Well, actually, the collector's edition isn't for Classic. It's a 15-year anniversary collector's edition is how they're.
I see.
And, yeah. So, well, originally when you bought the collector's edition, it came with 3 in-game pets, and they are super rare because the first kind of collector's edition was quite rare. And it's like a mini Diablo, Zergling, and a Pan.
Okay. Now, does anyone else here have any information that they've learnt in the last sort of, few hours about Classic that they didn't know before that they feel has been confirmed through the videos? Jamie, go for it.
Yeah, we were just on the topic of mounts. I don't think anyone said this, but they are going to have the original mount system where you had like wolf riding and raptor training and whatever.
Yep.
So they're going to be separate and you have to pay for them separately.
Okay, cool. Excellent. And just on the Jacoby, is there anything else that you picked up on?
Oh yeah, sorry, I called out like 6 months ago. I asked a question in either Paladin or Priest chat in the Discord about like, oh, what do we think? Will the ability to sit down and get guaranteed critical hits be in the game? Because that does affect your gameplay if you're going to be a Rekadin, like for example, because you need to generate those crits really fast and then let those all go at once. That's a private server thing. That's not going to be in the game, and that's been confirmed so far. So, interesting. It changes things for some people. I'm not too worried about it, but I don't like those kind of things anyway, like sitting down to get free hits, like that, get free crits. That's weird to me. I don't like it. So I'm glad it's out, but it will affect other people.
Just for argument.
Well, the beauty is,
go Viv.
I was just going to say, the beauty is you'll still be able to sit down to be crit. It just won't be for any reason. So if you feel like getting destroyed, then
yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah. And just for argument's sake, I know we had Thaloris on the show recently saying that, and I was a bit unsure because Viv, as you say, like sit down and you'll still get crit. Thaloris was on the show just last week, I believe, saying that, he was of the opinion, and he's spoken to people who had confirmed with him through screenshots or what have you, that, sitting down was a thing in vanilla, but I wasn't sure if he was talking about sitting down to crit or sitting down to crit and judging up those, stacking up those wreck bombs. I think he was talking about wreck. So it's either one of two situations. Either it wasn't the case in vanilla, Thaloris says otherwise, or it was the case in vanilla and they've since decided to change that. I don't know. But
honestly, the only thing I remember about it is that you could definitely be crit while sitting down, because when they implemented that change, my life became much more scary because as a mage who constantly has to sit down to drink water while leveling, that was my second character I leveled. At that point, I was like, oh God, rogues. Oh God, rogues. Because you could just get ambushed for like 3/4 of your health while you're leveling as a mage.
Ale, I'm going to circle back to you guys. We're going to go through round the home turn into this call and sort of finish up with this one. Overall, Ale, and I'm getting a little bit of an impression that, look, it's amazing that we got a release date. I don't want to back away from my excitement over that, and I'm sure everyone's excited over that. But Ale, I feel a little bit of trepidation from you in regards to the other news that we've got. Is that a fair assessment?
That's a fair assessment, and I definitely feel like we need more information from Blizzard. I would like them to really clarify exactly how the layering is going to work. Because my concern is, like I said, is about the community of Classic, and if, there is abuses that can happen, that will be a detriment.
Okay. Jamie, how are you feeling overall? You feeling great? We finally had the big day?
Yeah. I mean, I'm coming into the game with like zero expectations as a Wrath baby, so I'm good.
All right. Jacoby, how are you feeling today, my man?
Pretty good. I'm, like I said, just finally having a date is something worth celebrating. I think we need to keep that as our main positive thing. Like I said, if it's not good for you, my heart goes out to you. If it's good for you, then congratulations. But at least it all allows us to make plans and adjustments, with over 100 days in advance. So I think it's a good thing. Finally have a date. So congratulations.
Absolutely. It's definitely a great day for the community. Everyone can run off and book in their leave. I know I'll be going to work in like 3 hours time and doing exactly that as soon as I get there. Gigantor, how are you feeling overall, mate?
Feels like a second birthday to me. They answered a lot of questions and they raised a lot more. I'm really interested to see how they kind of prevent people from abusing the layering system. I want to see how they're going to manage that.
Yes,
or if they even bother.
As Jacoby said, they answered a lot of questions, but they raised even more. And Viv, I'll finish up with you, mate. You're generally a pretty positive guy. How are you feeling about all this? You happy today?
In some ways, I have just like straight mixed feelings, I feel like right now, because there's certain things, as long as the abuse doesn't get too bad with the resources, and as long as there's queues after the fact, after phase 1, where the population is at least relatively close to the way it was in vanilla, where there's not like massive economy problems and population everywhere to where you can't farm anything, then I think it'll be all right. But in the long run, I guess it'll all pan out regardless, because, I mean, even if you get ahead super early on, nobody else can do that in the future, and eventually you have to keep farming or you're going to run out of money regardless, I feel like, or play the auction house a lot. You have to continue to do something at some point.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Eventually it'll work itself out, I suppose. So I guess we'll just see. But I'm pretty happy. We have a release date, all that kind of stuff. It's pretty cool.
Hooray. Well, look, let me sort of say this, guys, to finish up. We do have that release date. I look forward to seeing everyone on this call and everyone listening and everyone in general on August 27 of this year for World of Warcraft Classic. I cannot wait for that launch. We'll all go home and we'll all hope and pray that we somehow get involved in the beta. That would be a bit of fun as well, but obviously can't necessarily rely on that. Whatever happens, happens. But we'll wait on perhaps even more news from Blizzard over the coming weeks about what's coming. But, we've got the date. I had guessed August 20 to 27. I gave you all that 1 week window about 6 weeks ago. I was cheating a little bit because I've got my source who had given me enough information that I could make an educated guess. Turns out the educated guess was sort of, pretty good. So that's great. But, here we are. It's not that far away. And, I just can't wait, everyone. So I'll rush to work, see if I've got an email from Blizzard about anything. If I do, I'll let you all know. But hopefully some of you get involved as well, and we'll share some stories on the Discord. Now, guys, thank you so much for calling in, and I might just get a big group, hooray. We got the date. How about on 3, 2, 1, we all shout out August 27. 3, 2, 1, August 27. Couldn't have gone better. All right. Thanks so much, guys.
Dear God.